Hi, this is Anna Schub from the Hat Junkie, and I wanted to share some of my tips for sewing hemp braid into a hat. I'm gonna just kind of let the video go, so the tips I give you won't necessarily match what you're seeing on the screen, because I'm just not that savvy to align it all. So I start my button, which is the very beginning center, by hand. And this just helps you get a nice little round shape. You can do it on the machine, but you're going to get more of an oblong shape to it. So it's up to you which you prefer. Hemp braid is super soft, and I think people sometimes have trouble with it coning up and the tip of the hat not being able to lay nice and flat. So I accidentally solved this by keeping the tipper of my machine pulled out pretty much for the whole hat. If you don't have a tipper, the tipper is it's a little button that you would have, or lever that you have to pull it out to make the presser foot jump up and down, and this helps when you're trying to sew around a narrow circle. But I find if I sew fairly slowly and keep that tipper out, that I'm able to get the tip of the hat fairly flat. If you don't have a tipper on your machine, you might try somewhere on your machine you'll have a screw that will loosen the presser foot tension, and I think that would likely do it too. You also need quite a loose tension for straw braid. So the way to check it is after you've sewn a little bit or do a test strip, you want to look on the underneath side of the chain stitch. The top of a chain stitch looks like a regular lock stitch, but underneath you'll actually see a chain stitch. If the tension is too tight, then what you'll see will basically look like a lock stitch, just flat. If it's too loose, you're going to see the stitches almost lifted away from the hat. But when it's just right in that Goldilocks way, then what you're going to see is you will actually see the definition of the chain stitch, but it isn't too loose or too tight. So let's see. Yeah, so those are the tips for getting the top of the hat nice and flat and not coning up on you. I, as you'll see, take the hat off the machine as I'm working a few times, and I always have a hat block next to me in the size that I want to create. And my goal is to get the shape of the hat to go loosely over the hat block, just slightly loosely, just like maybe a finger's width. And then after I'm done with the hat, I block it so that I can really form it to the hat properly. So that hat block is super important to checking how you're doing. So it's quite tricky to get the hat to the right size. So sometimes it'll be, it's just going a little bit too, like it's coming in on itself as I'm doing the size of the hat, and then the hat starts to get smaller and smaller. So this means the tension is too tight. So, smaller and smaller means the tension is too tight. So in that case, you want to either loosen your tension a little bit on the machine, or if you might have been pulling on the straw a little bit, which would tighten it. So in that case, just let the straw run freely through the machine and that will loosen it. On the other hand, if the tension is too loose and the hat is making a sort of A-line shape as it's going down, that's when I usually pull on the straw that's feeding into the machine a little bit, and this tends to tighten it up. All this can be done on the machine too. if you have, it's called a tension knob, like I don't know anything about the new machines, but the old machines have a tension knob, and that's quite a handy little feature. My machine has one, but it's completely rusted out. So it means that when you set your tension and you like the tension, you put the knob to the middle of the machine, and then you can loosen it or tighten it by moving the lever to the left or the right, and then you'll always know where that perfect tension is. So that's an excellent little feature on the machine. But if you don't have that, you can adjust the tension with your tension screw, or you can also adjust it by just how much you're pulling on the straw. So I often have to unravel in the middle of making a hat, and it's easy. That's the good news and bad news about a chain stitch, is that it unravels easily, but then of course you also have to watch that it doesn't unravel once you have the hat made. So once you've unraveled it to the point that you want to unravel, I then take a needle and thread, and looking from the underneath side, I hand stitch back through the loops. Make sure your little hand needle is going right through the loops of your chain stitch, and that will secure it into place. And then you just start again. So is there anything else that I can share with you guys? Yeah, do like when you're checking the size of the hat, don't just do it from measuring the sides, because you'll see that as it goes on the block, sometimes it's like a little bit wider on the top, and that when it actually goes on the block, some of that top becomes the sides of the hat, and so then the depth of the hat changes. So really measure it on the block, and I usually put a pencil line on my hat block of where I want my hat to end. And let's see, yeah, and then the brim is, right, another little tricky point is when you are going from the sides of the hat to the brim, that is a place where sometimes you'll find a little gap that hasn't quite, where the stitches haven't quite caught. So I usually push my guide in a little bit and make the layers of the braid overlap a little bit more when I'm coming to that switch of going from the sides to the bottom, to the brim, and then I put it back out, and then to finish the hat, yeah, I usually just, on a hemp braid hat, I just fold under the edge and then hand sew it. I find that's all you need, but of course you could put a whole other layer.